This upcoming Halloween will be my 40th birthday, and even after nearly 25 years, the terrifying memory of that night has never faded. You see, I lost my virginity in a pumpkin patch on Halloween. I know, cliché. Specifically, I lost it in the bed of a pickup truck while it was parked in the pumpkin patch. To give you an idea of the patch, it was maybe 80 by 100 feet and fenced off by a wire mesh to prevent cows from getting in. The truck was parked just inside the only gate. Myself and my date had settled there right before the sun went down. My house was just across the street from the pumpkin patch. We shared a bottle of wine, awkwardly talked for a while, and then got to business. My family and I had 2 border collies, and as we were changing positions, the dogs have wandered in and started barking at us. My date and I paused and drunkenly, playfully began throwing scraps of food out into the pumpkins for them to chase. After a couple minutes of that, we continued right where we left off. After we were done, we sat there in the truck and looked up at the stars while the dogs wandered off around sniffing random things. After a short while, I saw my father return home, pulling into the driveway across the street. The dogs bounded out of the patch towards him, and me and my date quickly began to dress ourselves. Once we were fully clothed, we just sat on the tailgate and kept talking as we watched my dad pet the dogs and then go into the house. It was about then when we heard it. A rustling sound coming from the patch somewhere behind us. We both paused and turned. At this point, there was only moonlight to illuminate our surroundings, but it was enough. And this is exactly what we saw. A single pumpkin began to rise up out of the patch, but not like someone was lifting it. It was kind of sideways, like it had been resting on its side and now it was sitting up. For a split second, I thought that someone was raising this pumpkin out of the patch on a stick or a metal bar. But then the stick changed position. It coiled like a snake and then shot straight up like a man would if he went from a squatting position to a standing position. I then saw 2 spindly legs with knee joints protruding from the thing, but no arms. There was a buzzing in my ear, and all of a sudden my date screamed. We both jumped off the truck and booked it out of the patch and sprinted towards my house. I glanced back once, and I'll swear on whatever you want me to swear on. A tall, skeletal figure was leaning over the truck, where we had just both been sitting, and I caught a glimpse of 2 beady red eyes staring back at me. We made it to my garage and forced our way in through the kitchen door. I began screaming at my dad to get his gun. It wasn't until I saw the blood on the kitchen floor that I realized that my nose had been bleeding. Even more alarming, my date's nose was gushing blood as well. I told my dad that there was something in the pumpkin patch. He grabbed his gun and power walked out of the house, the dogs following closely behind him. But they stopped when halfway there, refusing to come any closer to the pumpkin patch. When my dad returned, he was livid. He wanted to know what had damaged the fence and broke the tailgate off of my truck, which technically was his truck. I could only shiver in confusion and abject terror. He reported that something had ripped the tailgate right off my truck and then tore out of the patch from inside and destroyed a huge section of fence. I didn't sleep at all that night. I cowered in terror in the living room with all the lights on. The next day, the police came to examine the scene. The wire fence had been torn out of the ground and dragged a short distance away, and there was no clear indication of what specifically had done it. My father and the police were convinced that it was a trespasser pulling a Halloween prank, but I never believed that for a moment. I tried to explain that the dogs had been pounding through the patch just 2 minutes before the thing had appeared, and neither of them had made a sound to alert us that there was a trespasser nearby. Furthermore, the entry gate to the patch made plenty of noise whenever the wind rattled it. So if someone climbed over it, it would make even more noise, and we had been sitting right by the gate. Another thing that terrified me was the shape of the thing as it stood. Even if it was a trespasser with an elaborate costume, none of that would even begin to explain the tailgate, the destroyed fence, the nosebleeds, and our dogs being too nervous to approach the patch, or the eyes that I had caught a glimpse of. And my father went to his grave believing that he had been vandalized by trespassers. My date and I concluded later that whatever it was, it hadn't been human or an animal. I don't tell the story often because I mostly get the same Charlie Brown joke. It was the Great Pumpkin, so no one really takes me seriously. But I've heard that skinwalkers can take the form of anything that best suits their surroundings. Our property wasn't anywhere near a Native American reservation, but I can't think of anything else that it could have been. So what do you think it was? Did you like the story? Check out our channel for more.